I have a problem with climate change activism. Whenever there's a project, the city, for example in Saskatoon, is building a BRT rapid transit system. On the website, in all the speeches and all the presentations, it's all about the environmental benefit. They say one bus can take up to 27 cars off the road. Okay, how did they get that number? What the heck?
While reducing traffic and emissions.
Rapid transit can't actually do either of those things alone. But that's a topic for a future video. My problem with this is that it makes the environmental benefit seem like the biggest reason that we should do it. I don't believe that it is the strongest argument. BRT, for example, has so many other benefits to the economy, to individuals' lives, to the community, to transportation efficiency. There is so many other benefits than the purely environmental one, which they don't talk about. And so when you have people who are maybe skeptical about climate change, or they don't believe that climate change is something that we should be worried about, when environmental benefits are the only ones that they talk about, suddenly you have so many people, maybe even 50% of the population, who suddenly don't support the project anymore because to them, it's a purely environmental project. If the other benefits were what we had talked about, they probably would have supported it. Okay, so my second problem with climate change activism is that it's so focused on creating fear. I heard a speech by Greta Thunberg who said, I want you to be up all night long, or something to the effect, so terrified about what climate change will do to you. She thinks that fear is the only way for people to make action. It's the only way for things to get done. And I don't know if that's true. Climate change activism has used the fear tactic, fear-mongering they call it. They've used it for, the past 20 years. And has it gotten anywhere? I don't know. I think that there's better ways to do it, because what fear-mongering does is it just creates, just that, fear. When we do things from a place of fear, we're not doing it from a place of truly loving the creation and actually wanting to make a difference. We're just doing it because we're scared. It's a fight, flight, or freeze situation, right? Some people will fight, and they actually will try to stand up for climate change and whatnot. There's others who will just fight. They'll say, well, it's all fear-mongering. It's all fear-mongering. I'm not doing anything. I'm gonna leave it be. And then you have people who freeze. They just sit there and they don't do anything. Inaction. I read a quote that says, surely the greatest threat to humanity is inaction. Inaction is so deadly, and that's the main problem that we have right now when it comes to climate change. We aren't doing enough. And I think that fear may be one of the largest reasons. Now, there's one other thing, and it's what I call the climate blame game. So when you take a look at climate change activism, the messages from governments about climate change, it's all talking about what you can do, what the individual can do. You should bike to work. You should make sure to turn off all your light bulbs. Invest in solar panels. You should drive an electric car. At some level, that is true. We need individuals to make changes, right? But when we look at the percentages, when we look at the data about who is the largest polluters, every single time, it's the corporations. It's the oil and gas companies. It's governments even. The effects that would have if 1 million people, for example, switch to electric cars is so much smaller than what would happen if the government, for example, stopped subsidizing fossil fuels. And so that's why I don't think it's fair for them to say it's all up to the individual. I don't think it's fair, because at the end of the day, what's that going to do? Probably not much, right? It's not going to actually solve the problem. It goes back to the fear thing. That just creates a lot of fear in individuals when they think it's all up to me. It's all my fault. I should be the one who can fix it all, when you can't fix it. A single person cannot fix this problem. Individuals are not responsible. I read an article that talked about how BHP, like the oil company, they were the ones who came up with the whole idea of carbon footprint. Like, that was their idea. There's a lot of evidence to show that, fossil fuel companies, part of their agenda, to put the blame, to put the responsibility on the individual, because then they're not held accountable. When the responsibility is on the individual, they can stay safe, right? I read a quote from another article which said, every time someone buys an electric car or puts in solar panels, the big corporations can breathe easy. We're actually helping them. We're helping those big corporations because we're going along. We're agreeing with the fact that it is our responsibility to fix it. Now, does this mean that you should not buy an electric car? That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that you shouldn't install solar panels. I'm not saying that you should make every effort you can. But you shouldn't make those changes because they're going to change the world. We change because it's what's going to have to happen, not because it's going to change the world. Another way to think about it is, if I'm advocating for climate change and everything, it's not ideologically consistent if I didn't do those things. If I went to the big corporations and I said, you need to change, and then they said, well, you haven't done these things, so why should you tell me to change if you haven't changed yourself? It'd be like backhanded trickery if you didn't do those things while also advocating for climate change. Now, so where does this put me? You might see me as a climate activist, but that's kind of changed. I don't see myself as a climate activist anymore. I've realized that climate change activism might not be the way to go. And what I've found instead is that the largest difference that we can make is maybe through, a separate topic that's not climate specific. So for example, for me, I have a love for urban planning. Now, urban planning does address climate change, but it doesn't just do climate change. It focuses on humanity. It focuses on community. It does public health, loneliness, mental health. It does so many other things that simply focusing on climate change wouldn't address. And yet it still addresses climate change. I'm moving away from climate change activism is the only way to, well, let's see how else we can address this problem. And the other thing is, it seems like we're always stuck in this cycle of, we need to fix climate change, we need to fix it, we need to fix it, we need to fix it. But we never actually get anywhere. At this point, the idea of, we ought to take care of the environment, that's old news, guys. We should be putting that into practice everywhere by default. We shouldn't continue talking about why this is important, right? We should all expect nothing less for every profession, every company, to put that idea into practice. We should all expect nothing less. That's what urban planning does. Urban planning has already accepted that climate change needs to be stopped. The urban planning community has accepted that the environmental benefit is not the largest benefit to a given project. They'll name the environmental benefit there, but they don't make it out as the only reason they're doing it. Municipal governments, on the other hand, are still stuck touting all the environmental benefits when they don't talk about the whole other side of the story. And maybe this is all I'm trying to say, that climate change activism is too heavily focused on climate change. And in doing so, they miss a whole range of other things. And so I want to try to focus on those other things, not just the climate change portion. So please stay tuned. I'll hopefully have some urban planning videos coming up soon. Yeah.